with these housekeeping items behind us, let's begin our program. Our keynote address this morning will be delivered by Dr. Robbert Zusterzeel, the Research Network Director of NEST. Prior to joining NEST, Dr. Zusterzeel was a medical officer at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, focusing on cardiovascular devices and also drug development. Dr. Zusterzeel earned his MD and PhD from Maastricht University and a Master of Public Health in Epidemiology from Harvard University. Please welcome Dr. Zusterzeel to deliver the keynote address of real-world evidence on medical devices.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Yuan, for such a kind introduction. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about real-world evidence for medical devices. Let's see if I can move this forward. There we go. I wanted to start out with telling you what I'm going to talk to you about today. And hopefully during this presentation, you will learn that real-world data is data generated in a routine course of care. It can be stored in electronic health records, claims environments, and also disease or device registries. It can be used to generate what we call real-world evidence if that real-world data is appropriately analyzed and is fit for purpose throughout the medical device total product life cycle. So very simply, just I know everyone's aware of this, but when you go to a doctor, the doctor hopefully notes what has been going on, your symptoms, potential tests that he or she does in the electronic health record. And then, of course, there's billing that goes after that to the insurance provider. So that creates a claims record either on the doctor side or on the insurance side, definitely on the insurance side. So that's two data sources that we generally see will contain some healthcare information about individual people. And then, of course, there's separately the device or disease registries that don't just exist on the device side, but also on the pharmaceutical side that really capture specific quality improvement measures or are used for research. So all of these data sources that we'll talk about today can be used in what we call real-world evidence for different questions, for answering different questions. So other examples that we generally don't necessarily think about as much in terms of the real-world data paradigm is remote clinical trials, currently very high level, knowing about the COVID crisis. Telemedicine is another one, like wearables, and of course, how we can use all this real-world data from these different sources, like EHRs and claims and registries, and also machine learning or artificial intelligence-driven approaches in software as a medical device, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later today, and other presenters will touch on those. So one of the uses of real-world evidence can be to meet pre-market and post-market regulatory requirements, such as those by the FDA or others. Right? The EU focuses on some of the real-world data, real-world evidence, and post-market surveillance as well. And it's not just for regulatory requirements. You can also think about patient studies or creating the evidence for payers or creating evidence for FDA. And so it's not just industry trying to go through the regulatory process. One of the big advantages of using real-world data and real-world evidence is that it can reduce cost and time, of course, compared to what are usually more necessary and more expensive randomized controlled clinical trials. And of course, this can never ever really replace that, but there are items or certain situations in which real-world data, real-world evidence can play a role. And of course, it's potentially a better reflection of the device's true benefit risk profiles compared to clinical studies, knowing that it's used in the real world in a wider population. So I think we'll talk a bit later today also about the recent example that I'm happy to elaborate on around the FDA's emergency use authorization, which I think in Canada, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, are called interim orders, such as for those COVID-19 in vitro diagnostic tests or therapies. Then I'll talk a bit about the National Evaluation System for Health Technology Coordinating Center, with NSCC, which is where I work, and that NSCC was convened by medical device industry as well as the Food and Drug Administration together to really assess the applicability, strengths, and limitations of real-world data, different real-world data sources and real-world evidence for mainly pre-market use cases, but also improved post-market surveillance, such as those for 522 studies and post-approval studies on the FDA side.